Welcome to Let's Talk Transportation, a podcast series of the Broward Metropolitan Planning Organization, also known as the MPO. We talk about the ins and outs of transportation in Broward County and all of Southeast Florida, why it matters, how it works, and the challenges and opportunities related to achieving great transportation. I'm your host, Greg Stewart, Executive Director of the MPO, and I'm joined by
Bill Ganz, the mayor of the city of Deerfield Beach.
So, Bill, Mr. Mayor, let's go that way. Can you explain how you ended up here in Southeast Florida and how you became mayor of Deerfield Beach?
Well, I was born in Southeast Florida. I was actually born in Hollywood, so that was an easy one for me. Didn't have to relocate.
No far commute. Okay.
That's right. It was a lot different back then, that's for sure. But I was born in Hollywood at Hollywood Memorial Hospital, the Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital now. And I've lived in South Florida my entire life, except for a brief period of time in Chicago. And I went to college in Tallahassee, so I spent some time away. I came back when I moved to Deerfield Beach going on almost 30 years ago. I slowly became what they would call a community activist and started showing up to City Hall and seeing some things that I liked and seeing some things that I didn't like, and thought that, I'd like to throw my hat in the ring. And that's how I've been involved for 18 years, 20 years now.
How did you end up in Deerfield? What was the, instead of going back down to Hollywood where you were from?
Well, I wasn't familiar with South Palm Beach or North Broward. I was definitely a Central Broward, South Broward guy. My grandparents grew up in Old Pembroke Pines, what they called West Hollywood at the time, and also in Miramar. So I was very familiar with that area, the North Perry Airport area. And then we were out west, out in unincorporated Broward, out by the old Kapok tree off 84 when it was just a two-lane. Yeah, right. So I actually met I met someone, and we moved in together over in Boca. She lived in Boca Raton, and I lived in Boca, and we started looking for places. And someone said, "Have you tried Deerfield?" And we went there and fell in love with it. So, like I said, I've been there for almost 30 years now.
Much more affordable. Boca Raton. I grew up in Boca Raton, so my own experiences when it was time to actually buy my own place, and the irony, and we'll get to that in a little bit, was I ended up in a place called Meadow Ridge East.
Oh, yeah.
I could afford because it was, I want to say maybe $55,000. It was some really wonderful number that was like, okay, this is great. It was 55 plus community.
Something we'll never see again.
No, no, we won't. And I understand kind of that going into Deerfield Beach, especially from, the Boca Raton experience, because Delray became more and more, price prohibited. And, Deerfield really has a lot to offer, whether it was the old, what was the restaurant called that was right there at the Intercoastal and Caps. Yeah, exactly. And that whole experience was just a very different kind of beachy feel to the city. It was really laid back, and I could see why you and your partner at the time would have fallen in love with the experience that is Deerfield Beach.
It's been a great place to raise my girls. We said we moved in years ago at a time when, we're now at 85,000 people in Deerfield Beach. It's still a quiet beach town for 85,000, which is, keeping that kind of village feel that we have.
That's amazing. I didn't realize it got to that large of a population, and I work down here.
Yeah. I mean, the last 10 years, we've gained 10,000 residents.
Wow. That's pretty amazing. That really is. And, I remember the center of City Hall, and back when I first got this job, we were working on the Obama administration was in, and they did that stimulus package for the bridge.
The Dixie Flyover.
Yeah. Now, as somebody that grew up here, just like you, that was promised to the community probably 20, 30 years earlier. And I remember there were a fairly robust Black population that was there that had like stores, and they weren't the best in the world, but they weren't the worst. And it was a really kind of interesting experience. They tore all that down saying they were going to build this bridge, and they never built a bridge. So when you got there, what were you noticing in Deerfield? I mean, was there that underlay of like, yeah, we promised you're going to do something and nothing happened, and you were kind of upset by that? Or what really got you into the politics side of that?
Well, unfortunately, when I first started going to commission meetings, like I said, I haven't missed a commission meeting in going on almost 18 years now.
Wow.
That's 15 years in office and over 2 years of going to every single commission meeting.
For the listeners that don't know this, Bill Ganz actually started out as a lowly commissioner before becoming the great mayor.
I was a city commissioner in District 4, the western portion of Deerfield, for 8 years, and now I'm 7 years as mayor. And when I first got there, we had our District 4 commissioner was removed from office. Our mayor was removed from office.
Oh, that's right. There was
a lot of things that were going on that shouldn't have been going on in our city. So it was time for a change, and you felt that we needed better representation, and hopefully I've been able to do that.
Well, I mean, I can see it from somebody that the layman's eye. You go up to Deerfield and the experience that there is phenomenal. And, just looking at how it's all set up and how it's finally developed the right way. That whole area, and I guess I was in your district. I lived in your district. Meadow Ridge would have been actually in your district. I mean, just you go there today and you see it, and it still looks good. It didn't go reverse. It didn't actually have a bad falling out. It actually looks awesome. But I'm going to ask you, because this was the toughest thing I've ever done in my career, and that has to do with the Sawgrass Expressway. Really hard project. You and I having lived down here, having lived in Meadow Ridge East, and I remember getting in my car and going, why doesn't that connect to 95? And I didn't understand it. And there wasn't Waterford, there wasn't Independence Bay wasn't in yet. And I was just like, I didn't understand that. But then I left. I went to Tallahassee. I did the Pittsburgh thing. I didn't go to Chicago. But then you come back and you see all this development that came in. That was probably one of the most difficult projects, because there was all this, the uses that were put there weren't necessarily compatible with an interstate highway. Can you kind of explain to me how you dealt with that? Because I've never seen a more masterful way of dealing with a very controversial project and getting really what the city needed in the end out of that. I mean, the truth ultimately will be told once it's built and how it looks. But I mean, just my own experience dealing with transportation projects, that was probably one of the most unique because of the amount of public input, because of the passions that were there. And, what was your take on it?
Well, it was an interesting thing. I mean, anybody who looks at a map, when you look at our transportation system in that area, you see this glaring gap that is there, which is Southwest 10th Street, the connector from the Sawgrass to I-95. So looking at that, you say, this doesn't make any sense. Why do you have this gap? And the reason was because of Century Village and the clout that was there at the time to prevent that from going in. The planning back then was not what it should have been when you look at how all these were being connected. Now, Century Village was built before the Sawgrass Expressway, long before that. That was actually going to be a Pittsburgh Pirates spring training site. It was, and they decided instead we'll do Century Village. So
that would have been really different history.
It would have been very different, that's for sure. Now, then years later, they had Independence Bay and waterways that was allowed in what was industrial land right on 10th Street, with one of them at least having only one entrance and exit right there going onto the deceleration point of the Sawgrass going into 10th Street. So the planning was really difficult. So you've inherited kind of a bit of a mess. Now, common sense says, yes, that connector should be there, but once you develop that close to it, the impact is brutal to a city. And as you know, it wasn't something that my residents or even myself necessarily wanted. I understood the reason why we needed it, but trying to conform something, trying to fit something like that into that area that has been so overdeveloped or developed up to the edge of the road is very difficult to do.
I mean, even though I remember my own words. I went to the city commission one night in Deerfield. I'm like, this Sawgrass will never go to 95. I'm talking about eating my own words, but I didn't see how that was humanly possible. I just didn't. And so the artfulness, and this is what I do mean in that, was phenomenal that you and I guess Commissioner Drotsky now, I guess he's going to run for mayor eventually.
Mm-hmm.
basically kind of put into that. And you look at the artwork that is going to be built there, between the local road, the actual 10th Street, the paths that are going in, the lighting, all the stuff that you wouldn't normally get with an interstate project. I mean, it's just amazing to me. And again, that was when I watched you do that, and it was a very delicate dance. It was like amazing to me that you were able to, move that forward and move it with the majority of the people that were there. I mean, yeah, there was a lot of people that didn't want it, but I mean, from my perspective, and again, I mean, I've been at this for a while, I've never seen that before. I just haven't. So,
well, I mean, quite frankly, we wouldn't be where we're at if it wasn't for the MPO and yourself and others that have worked with us to work with the FDOT to get us there. A lot of politicians would have taken the position, and they had in the past, this is never going to happen over my dead body. And the reality was the votes weren't there to stop this from allowing this to go through.
Sit here in the MPO chamber. There's a lot of votes here.
You could count what the support wasn't there to not have this go through, because from a regional transportation standpoint, it didn't make a lot of sense. So common sense comes in. It was not something we wanted, but we said, if it's going to happen, let's make sure we do it the right way. And I look back at some of the early articles on this first kickoff. It goes back to 2017. We're in 2024 now. That was when our first meeting started, Greg. And
wait, all the gray hair in my head. Okay.
Now we know where they all came from. That's right. Well, what's interesting about that is you and I, from the beginning, we said, this is a unique situation. It's a unique location.
Right.
So let's handle it differently. And, we took a slightly different approach. We didn't want to go the traditional route, and it was a lot of public input. When we put together the code committee that was residents, it was stakeholders, and we were able to work with the FDOT. And that was not easy to do because that wasn't something they were used to.
Right. Because they're used to telling people, I'm going to build this.
Yes. And they would have one public meeting, maybe.
Jack. Okay.
Yes. And then it's done. And I can't count how many public meetings we've had since 2017 on this. And it was a hard fought battle to say, it started with the concept of possibly a tunnel.
Yeah.
Which sounds familiar considering some of the things that are being discussed now in other areas of Broward.
It's still good ideas.
Great ideas. But I think we were lucky enough with this situation that we kind of flipped it over what we normally do. We had a lot of early meetings. So now as we're getting closer to the construction start of it, it's a different type of situation that the residents understood that it needed to come forward. And if it was going to come forward, let's make it the best possible project. And what I hope the positives that come out of this years from now, not just for the region, which we know what they're going to be, but I think the big part is for the residents of Deerfield who are impacted right there in the forefront, is that they have a safer route to get where they need to go. It doesn't kill our businesses there. It doesn't kill our property values. It gives us the opportunity to get out of waterways with their one entrance and exit safely. Independence Bay will have the ability to be safer.
Yeah.
So that's really important.
I think, when you look back at this, and I think you and I are going to be able to do that, hopefully, the experiences were positive. I think that, again, you made such a difference. And since this is a part of an oral history of how we got to where we are, eventually in 20, 30 years, people will have been using that for a good couple of decades. And it's going to be fun. Hopefully, you and I will be able to go back and listen to this and go, yeah, it wasn't that bad. But if you're going to give the people of the future some type of word of wisdom, what would that be?
To be involved, to not think that you can't make a change by having your opinion put out there. A lot of people like to come in with torches and pitchforks, and that's one approach you can take. And there have been times where we've had to utilize that strategy. But I think the best way to go about it is to be engaged. Don't fall for what we called meeting fatigue. As an elected official, I made sure that I said, we'll be there and we will inform our residents. And when we need them, we'll ask them to come out because our words can only go so far. When decision makers see the masses, it changes a bit. But I think it's important for residents and people and business owners out there to engage in their government entities in a way that is constructive.
Okay, and then I have one more thing because they're going to kill us because we're running overtime. But what was the one thing that you're going to say during your tenure as mayor and commissioner that is your proudest moment in Deerfield?
Wow. That's a tough one, to be honest with you. I've
cut this out.
I've been in office for a really long time, and there's a lot of great things that we've done in the city when I look back at it. And as I enter my last year in office there and being term limited out, there are a lot of things. I couldn't pinpoint just one. I will say this. I think changing the way FDOT and the MPO approaches projects like this with 10th Street and being more aggressive with engaging the public and taking their feedback, to me, I think that to me is something I'm extremely proud of, to have been a part of that, to change the way we traditionally have done these projects and do it in a way that is more engaged with the community.
Well, you know what? We're going to have a chance to probably talk about a tunnel and bridge some other location. So hopefully you stay around down here in Southeast Florida, make that difference, and share the wisdom with others, because that's going to be the most important thing.
Well, it's weird to be 55 years old and be an elder statesman in this, but I'm always going to be here to serve and help everybody. And just like you've been, and you've been a great guide on this. So everybody at the MPO has been a fantastic team to work with.
We appreciate that. Mayor, thank you for coming in today, and definitely looking forward to seeing what the future brings.
Thank you, Greg. Appreciate it.
The Let's Talk Transportation podcast is produced by the Broward MPO, where every day we fund and implement projects that move people and goods, create jobs, and strengthen communities. Learn more at browardmpo.org and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Speak Up Broward. If there is a transportation topic you'd like to know more about, let us know by sending an email to info@browardmpo.org. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. Views and opinions expressed by MPO employees are those of the employees and do not necessarily reflect the view of the MPO or any of its officials. For complaints, questions, or concerns about civil rights or non-discrimination, or for special requests under the Americans with Disabilities Act, please contact Carl Ema, Title VI Coordinator, at 954-876-0052 or EMAC at browardmpo.org.